Zacama is overpowered and underplayed, and today I'm going to show you why. This dino might just be the beastliest creature in the modern format. For a whopping 9 mana, you get a 9/9 trample, vigilance, reach with 3 crazy activated abilities. One that kills creatures, one that kills artifacts and enchantments, and one that gains life. But that's not even the best part of this monster. When Zacama comes into play, you get to untap all lands. So if your deck is constructed in a way where your lands are producing more than 1 mana each, the possibilities are endless. Your opponents might even go extinct. This first match is going to showcase the insane power of this deck. No matter how much you try to avoid it, Zacama is coming for you. We find ourselves paired against one of the most popular decks in the format, Blue-Red Murktide, a tempo-based strategy with efficient flying creatures and counter magic. The way our deck is constructed, it gets more and more powerful the longer the game goes because we're able to generate a significant mana advantage using Lotus Field alongside cards like Flagstone of Trokir. The game commences with 3 turns of draw go until my opponent breaks the stalemate with a Dragon's Rage Channeler. I've got a handful of answers and dispatch the creature before it can take flight. Now, my opponent's strategy is predicated on filling their graveyard, but unfortunately for them, I've got my main deck copy of Endurance in my hand. I tap Lotus Field to flash it in during their end step, and it's met by Counterspell, which I expected. The trick against this deck is to bait using less powerful cards to clear the way for cards you really want to resolve. Now with my 1 ring on the board, my advantage is going to grow exponentially. I untap with 5 mana available, draw 2 cards, and decide to test the waters with World Soul's Rage, a powerful new spell from Murders of Karlov Manor that fills 3 roles for this deck: ramp, removal, and it's even a win condition, as you'll see momentarily. For now, I cast it for 3, putting my total mana count up to 9. My opponent resolves a Murktide region on their turn, but with only 2 mana up, we should be able to exile it on our turn. Solitude takes care of the dragon, and then I spend the rest of my turn furthering my mana advantage with double Cleansing Wildfire. My mana count is now up to 12. They're scrambling to keep up, casting Expressive Iteration into Dashed Ragavan, which is laughable at this point. Now that they're tapped out, we've got free reign to cast any number of the 12 cards in our hand. I start with Blood Sun, which allows me to play a second Lotus Field without any drawbacks. I follow up with Escape to the Wilds, which lets me play out another Lotus Field. If you're keeping count, that's now 18 mana in play. Another ring comes down to give me protection and set up for the final kill. Dashed Ragavan does nothing with my protection, and now it's open season. I untap with 4 Lotus Fields, tap all my mana, and proceed to cast Zacama, fully expecting it to get countered. Fortunately, I've got enough mana to do it again. Zacama number 2 enters play, and they have removal to kill it with the untapped trigger on the stack. But 3rd time's a charm. I cast my last Zacama, and it sticks with 18 mana floating and plenty more in the chamber. I follow up with Chandra, Hope's Beacon, looking for another World Soul's Rage to finish the job. Chandra's +1 ability reveals the sorcery in the top 5 cards. I cast it for X equals 21, and Chandra doubles down, making it a total of 42 damage for a Game 1 win. Wow. I feel like our deck is pretty well set up to deal with what they're doing. We're going to bring in Endurances and pick your poisons. We're going to board out Chandra, Escape to the Wilds, Eternal Witness, Blood Sun, and Cleansing Wildfire. I think that looks pretty good. We'll keep it. Opponent's on a mulligan of 5. Spire Bluff, Dragon's Rage, draw Lotus Field. We'll shock, ending the Channeler. Polluted Delta, back our way. Draw another Charm, not what we're looking for. Commercial District trigger. Blood Sun, not going to do it. We'll put that in the graveyard. Opponent fetches. Breeding Pool, tapped. Iteration. Preordain in exile. Flooded Strand fetch. Steam Vent shock. Cast a Preordain. 1 top, 1 bottom. Flagstone's pretty good. I think we're going to start there this turn. 2 mana, Wildfire the Flagstones. Use the ability. We'll get a Forest. Pick your poisons, excellent. Flagstones trigger, yes. And we'll get a Portico. Solitude, also excellent. We'll keep that on top. Adawara, Dragon's Rage, 2 card types. Coming our way, we draw into a Solitude. We are going to make use of this mana here. I'm going to fire off a Charm, but it's going to counter it. That's fine. Lotus Field, trigger. We're going to put these 2 to the graveyard. One's paying costs. Iteration, trigger the Dragon's Rage. pick your poison in the graveyard, bobble, trigger the Dragon's Rage, keep a card on top, attack me for 3, down to 15. Draw off their bobble, and we draw into an endurance, which is very good. First priority is killing the Dragon's Rage, which is light work with pick your poison. From there, my game plan can lead me in one of two directions. I can lean on my endurance and try to resolve it to start beating down, or like last game, focus on resolving a 1-ring to generate an insurmountable advantage. I opt for the more powerful option, and after baiting with endurance during their upkeep, resolve my 1-ring on my next turn. They play out a monkey, which we knew about, which doesn't attack because of my ring trigger. We can now draw up to 7 cards in hand, but need to be careful because my life total is starting to dwindle. Solitude handles the monkey on their turn, and I'm getting the impression they may be out of counter magic. An 8/8 Murktide comes down, which will be lethal if we can't resolve our other Solitude. I evoke it in, and it resolves without my opponent flinching. Crisis averted. My other Solitude gets bolted down, and they use their last card in hand, a fearsome negation, to counter and exile my ring. I use my last 3 mana to cast Archmage's Charm to find Zacama and pass the turn back. They draw and play out a Dragon's Rage Channeler. Not so sure that's good enough. I draw up to 10 cards, cast Zacama, and for some reason, they don't want to play anymore. Disappointing. We've got some momentum, so we're not going to waste any time. We're 1-0. Let's move on to our second opponent, some guy named Spike. Opponent's on a 7-card hand. Start with a Portico. Archdruid's Charm will put that in the graveyard. Opponent with Basic Mountain, coming our way. Draw into a Grove. Third land is good. Bridge, pass turn. Opponent with Bloodstained Mire, fetch. Wonder if this is an Inti deck. Stomping Ground. Okay, so this is Storm. Draw into a Zacama. Play out a Grove, Blood Sun, trigger. And we're going to Solitude, getting rid of Zacama. Back to our opponent. Another Goblin, play out a Stomping Ground, coming to us. All right, draw into a Grove, which is pretty good. 4 mana for a 1-ring, trigger. We'll draw a card. Lotus Field, not bad. Opponent puts Gigantha to hand and has nothing else. Trigger the 1-ring, lose a life. Draw an Endurance, probably pretty good against him. Draw 2 more. Play out a Lotus Field. 4 mana World Soul's Rage. Put Flagstones into play. We'll Wildfire just to draw a card. Put a Forest into play. And we get another Solitude. Opponent's turn, 8 cards in hand, and they scoop it up. All right. We wound up winning the match in 3 games, but it was on the back of Solitude beats rather than Zacama. And because this video is about Zacama, we're going to move on to our next match where we face off against another deck with big, scary creatures. Blood Crypt, Shock, 18 life, 2 mana, Bitter Reunion, discard another Bitter Reunion. Okay, that's good. Draw 1 ring, don't hate it. 2 mana, Cleansing Wildfire, hit our bridge. We'll get a Plains, and we draw into a Lotus Field. Lotus Field, pretty good. With a 3rd land, Scalding Tarn, they fetch. Stomping Grounds, 15, Fable, Shaman into play. All right, that's a really good draw. 3 mana Blood Sun, draw another 1 ring, play out a Lotus Field. Could play the Eternal Witness, but I think I'm just gonna hang tight. We'll use it for a 1 ring in a few turns. It appears we're paired against Jund Creativity, which aims to cheat Archon of Cruelty into play using Indomitable Creativity. The only problem is that Dwarven Mine won't trigger, which should significantly hamper their strategy. This means they need to rely on Fable of the Mirrorbreaker to supply targets for their creativities, which I'm well aware of, but I make a mistake. I accidentally clicked through the Begin Combat stop on their turn, where I intended to flash in my Solitude and kill their Fable token. So now they can attack and make a treasure, which I can't interact with. This allows them to Thoughtseize me, take my interaction, and creativity for 1, putting an Archon into play. Fortunately, I had the answer in a second Solitude, but I definitely made things harder for myself than I needed to. They flip their Fable on their turn, play out a second Bitter Reunion, and pass the turn back. I can now untap, draw 2 with the ring, play a second Lotus Field, and cast Escape to the Wilds, which is a very powerful card in its own right. I get a second land drop, can play out a second ring, and then Cleansing Wildfire one of their lands to draw another card. I find a Zacama and an Archdruid's Charm. If we make it back to our turn, they're in trouble. Commercial District, 4 in hand, another Fable, no attacks back our way. We're going to take a point off the ring, Copperline Gorge, draw 2, another Lotus Field. We'll play that out. 3 white, 3 green, 3 red, green, green, Zacama. The dinosaur has arrived. Triggers, untap all of our lands. We'll start by destroying their Fable. 3 damage to the Reflection, 3 damage to the Goblin Shaman, another Blood Sun, draw another Lotus Field, attack for 2, opponent bolts our Eternal Witness. That is fine. I think their plan here is to persist this Archon. They Thoughtseize. Sure. Take a Charm, 2 mana persist, fire off the Charm, get Endurance, cast Endurance, target them, persist has no targets, and we're up a game. Alright. They were able to resolve a creativity for 3 in game 2, so needless to say, we lost that game. It's all or nothing in game 3. Okay, opponents also want to mulligan to 6, start their Portico, Forest. I think we want to hit our land drops here, so we'll put that on top. Commercial District trigger, Arid Mesa to the graveyard. We knew we were drawing that. Play out the bridge, pass the turn. Bloodstainmire, fetch, Blood Crypt, shock, Thoughtseize. Get one of our rings, draw into a Solitude, pretty good. Land and pass turn. Arid Mesa, fetch, basic mountain, Fable. Trigger the Fable, back our way. We draw a Grove. Opponent knows about the forest, so we'll play that out. One ring, trigger, draw a card, found a Zacama. So we're going to see what they discard before we decide if we're going to use this Solitude. Opponent discards 2, combat. We're going to exile Zacama, exile their Goblin Shaman. Second main Ren 6, they'll return a land to hand. Take 1 off our ring, draw Flagstones, we'll draw 2. Okay, Leyline not bad, Blood Sun not bad. I think we're going to force them to get a Dwarf here. We'll start with our Blood Sun. They fetch, Dwarf, trigger Blood Sun, draw Lotus Field. It's not a bad one. Play out Lotus Field. I think we're going to ending the Dwarf. Taking this line will still allow them to creativity for 1, but with the ring in play, it gives me a good chance of recovering, and Leyline of Sanctity will protect me from Archon triggers. The only thing is last game they showed me that they brought in a Terastodon, so if they hit their 1 copy and blow up my lands, I could be in trouble. That's brutal. That's the one they needed. Get rid of 3 of our lands. 3 3/3s. Take 2. I'd love to see a Solitude here. We'll draw 3. Okay, that's a Solitude. Grove, Charm, get a Solitude. Solitude, exile Leyline, hit Terastodon, attack, Ren 6, them. 2 mana, Invasion, we're okay with that. Get a treasure, discard an Archon, they have a Persist. Okay, Archon into play, sacrifice an Elephant, discard Sacred Foundry, land, can't fetch with that, and we'll untap. 1 ring trigger, down to 11. Prismatic Ending, we need to find another Solitude. We'll draw 4, that is not a Solitude. Commercial District, Wildfire, one of their green sources. They do have another basic, and I think we're just dead here. We're gonna take 4 off the ring, go down to 7. This is just lethal. We'll scoop it up. Need a Solitude. So we go into our 5th and final match with a 2-2 record after back-to-back God draws from a Rhino's opponent in round 4. A win here nets us a positive record and a coveted treasure chest. Let's go. Draw Flagstones. We'll start Sacred Foundry. Pass turn. They fetch. Get a Triome. Scalding Tarn. Back our way. Another Blood Sun. We'll play out the Forest. Pass it back. This could be creativity again. Fetch. Another Triome. Not sure what it is now. Arid Mesa. Probably creativity. They're representing a reprieve. Really wanted white card there. I'll play out our Grove. This is going to get reprieved, but we're going to do this anyway. They fetch. Headquarters. 2 mana. Counterspell. Okay. Same idea. So this is not creativity then. 3 mana. Teferi. Draws a card. It's very aggressive. Looking for a land drop. Back our way. We draw a bridge. Play out our Flagstones. Into a 1 ring. Draw a card. Found a Cleansing Wildfire. Another Teferi. Trigger. Bounce our ring. Still no land drop. Play a ring. Trigger. Draw a card. Zacama. Play the bridge. And pass the turn. Uptick Teferi. 3 mana. Fable. This is interesting. Not sure what they're doing here. Untap. Ring triggers down to 19. Draw a World Soul's Rage. We'll draw 2. Another Solitude and a Lush Portico. Cleansing Wildfire the Flagstones. Use the ability. Get a Plains. Archdruid's Charm to hand. Trigger the Flagstones. Yes. Lush Portico. Trigger Surveil. Another Wildfire. We'll put that into the graveyard. Forest. World Soul's Rage. Hit the Goblin Shaman for 2. Flagstones and Portico into play. Trigger the Portico. Temple Guard into the graveyard. Trigger Fable. Discard 2. Chalice and Wall of Omen. So they're blank deck. Uptick Teferi. Did they not find another land? Okay, they did. 4 mana. Okay, this is going to be a prismatic ending. Untap. Draw a second Zacama. Cast Zacama. Trigger. Opponent fires off a Solitude. Discards Wall of Omens. We'll gain 9. Untap all of our lands. Tap all of our lands. Try it again. Opponent has another Solitude. Kind of funny. Untap all of our lands. 3 mana for Blood Sun. Escape to the Wilds. That's a good one. We'll cast that. And we reveal no lands. Kind of crazy. I suppose I can play out the Beseiju and then Wildfire. Let's do that. Fire off the Wildfire and we'll get rid of the Headquarters. Let me draw into another Chandra. Opponent's turn, 2 in hand, flip their Fable. We take up Teferi, play out a land, 1 card in hand, back to us, and we have access to a lot of stuff. I think we start Prismatic Ending on Teferi. Okay, Teferi's gone. Play out Gruul Turf, 6 mana Chandra, and they do have counter magic, sure. Archdruid's Charm, exile Reflection, put with 1 card in hand. Another Teferi, okay. Minus draw card, play a land. Not sure that's going to be good enough. Draw into a 1 ring. We're going to start with Archdruid's Charm. Alright, and they scoop it up. Getting the Zacama there. Holy heck, this deck was super powerful. I want to thank MTGO user Nitroglyze for the list. I will see you all again very soon. Until then, you know the deal, my friend. Be well.